Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. As we come down the stretch of this season of seasons, this one-of-a-kind, glorious ride that is nearing its, hopefully its apex. We'll see. Of course, you are listening to this on a Monday, which means I am joined by my co-host, Jeremy Cohen. Jeremy, how are you feeling today?
Feeling good. Feeling confident. You know, it's been a long time since.
I like that.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen the Knicks play. Feels like an eternity. But
yeah, it does. How have you spent your time off? Can I ask?
Sure. How have I spent my time off? I've been watching TV. Okay. That's been fun. I finished Call My Agent. Great show.
I did not know there was a show that existed called Call My Agent.
It's very good. It's from France. It's
okay.
Yep. They're actually coming back for a surprise 5th season in a movie, so that's fun.
Nice.
What else did I watch? I don't know. Some basketball. Maybe a movie I saw, something, just being outside. It's starting to get beautiful out. So yeah. Yes. How about you, John? How did you spend your time?
There was some raking of leaves that took place yesterday. That was a walk. It was a walk around the neighborhood with both of the girls. I was in the mood last night because I watched a lot of basketball, but my wife and I, when the kids are asleep before a certain hour, it's movie night because it's a rarity. So if it's like, you know, that process bleeds into like 8:30, then it's just like, all right, you get to watch basketball tonight. But if it's like 7:30 and my wife is like, all right, I got 2.5 hours, two and a half hours in me, then it's movie night. So we decided to watch The Martian, which we had both seen before, but it was just, I don't know. We were in the mood for some kind of something comforting, something like, you know, just nice, easy. So yeah, that was what we did.
Yeah, I remembered. I rewatched The Truman Show. It's one of my favorites. It's great.
Wow. Have not seen that movie in a while. I remember seeing that in the theaters and thinking like, this is the greatest movie of all time.
Did you also walk out thinking, what if the world's all in this on me? Like, what if I am because there's a phenomenon where people felt the Truman Show effect and they believed that the entire world was built around them. And
I think maybe this season that's a good transition. This is not your first rodeo. No. Because this season has been so it has been so charmed and blessed and like everything. Where if ever I was going to feel that way, it would actually be right now. So for anybody who needs it, quick update, the Knicks, as we sit here and record this. So actually we should probably start off by saying, as has been the case for, I think pretty much this entire season for the most part, Jeremy and I are recording this episode on Sunday at, 10:39 a.m. as I sit here and look at the clock right now. So the Knicks Rockets game will not be finishing up until about 12 hours from right now. We felt comfortable moving. It was so a little inside baseball. We were talking about last week, like as we discussed on the pod a few weeks ago, like what would be the scenario where recording earlier in the day would be just like, it really would be bad. And Jeremy, of course, being the doomsdayer that he is, was like, what if they beat the Suns and who they just played, the Bulls? And then the Rockets game ended the win streak. So given that is not possible because they lost to the Suns, we were like, all right, we could record early and whatever happens tonight. Hopefully they don't lose to the Rockets, but I don't know.
The Bucks lost the Rockets, but they were without Giannis.
For all but a minute, yeah.
Right.
And we hope that Kevin Porter Jr. does not score another 50 points tonight. That would be rough. I feel pretty confident tonight. And I think, just like, it's funny, you know, they have this West Coast stretch right now. And then they finish up with 3 games that are none of them are gimmies. The 4th spot is precarious. And if we're being honest, the top 6 spot is precarious. But I too, like you, am feeling confident. And I feel like, you know, things could still go sideways. But man, with 8 games left here, 9 games left, I am feeling like this is, I'm feeling good, right? Should we feel that way? Is that a good reason to be?
Sure. Why not? I mean, look, again, this whole season is house money. Consider where we thought the Knicks would be. So I'll take where they're at. You know, I'd prefer to stay in 4-5, but the teams that are in 5, 6, 7 are right behind the Knicks. So, slipping up now, and it wouldn't be New York's fault. I wouldn't blame them. West Coast trips are usually pretty rough. But if you're able to, by the end of the season, survive in the 4 or 5 spot, then I think that's a pretty strong indication of how you've played as a season. Being able to overcome the last leg of that and all those easier wins that maybe you added on that whole month of April, that's important. That all plays into it and could be the reason between the Knicks potentially winning a first round series or just being blown out of one. So hopefully it's the former.
For sure. Although I don't know. I don't know. I should be more scared of the Bucks than I am, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We don't talk about that right now. What we should talk about, and look, preface this by saying, for anybody who's like, why are you guys going to spend time talking about this? This is the same bullshit nonsense that we do every year.
Well, before we get there.
Oh, wait, there's something else before the bullshit?
Shouldn't we at least talk about the Suns and the Bulls so that way people don't think like, oh, you're just talking about that?
Sure. You know what?
Do a quick moment. Yeah.
So before we get to the bullshit nonsense, which I am part of the bullshit nonsenseness. That's a word.
Nonsense. Yeah. Nonsense.
The Knicks, I think, had a very good week. And we haven't spoken since they played these 2 games. Kind of an interesting week because they ended up losing the Suns game by, what are they ended up losing by 7 or 8? And they ended up winning the Bulls game by 19. And it felt to me, at least, like the much more well-played game was the Phoenix game. Even though they lost, because Phoenix is, spoiler alert, really fucking good. And who knows where they're going to go in the West. But I think for the Knicks to come out and show that they were, here's what I take from this week. The Knicks came out against Phoenix, showed that they could play with the big boys, while at the same time showing that they probably can't beat the big boys. And against the Bulls, where they obviously came out hot and then lollygagged their way through the second and third quarters, they showed like they're good enough that they God, famous last words, they have an on switch, right? That they can just kind of flip, and they did. And that on switch was probably more or less in the form of Emmanuel Quickly, but they still turned it on. And I thought overall, good week to position them moving forward. Sure.
Yeah. I think the idea as well that the Knicks kind of look at the bigger opponents and take them seriously, and the other ones that kind of just don't put their foot on the gas, because we've seen that before where leads in the second quarter have just evaporated. It was a clunky game for at least the Bulls game for a bit of time. I think if you probably the first quarter for the Bulls game against, with the Knicks was great.
I mean, they were up 30-12 at one point. Yeah.
Right. So you think, oh, well, they should just keep growing this lead for a team that is without Zach LaVine and is basically just kind of floundering in a lot of ways. But they found a way to stick around, and the Knicks let them stick around. And as you said, it took until Emmanuel Quickly in the fourth quarter to really open things up for the Knicks and close down the game. I think for the Suns game as well, yes, it was great to see them hang in there. That was another game I really felt that they could have and should have won, even though the Suns are clearly a better team.
Could have won.
I think should have won. I think should have won in the sense of the lead was large enough that with that third quarter and especially with Cam Johnson getting hot later on when he just stunk on ice before. And you could say, well, if he didn't stink on ice, then maybe he wouldn't, the game wouldn't be even close to begin with. But it took also some Kris Paul miracle. Well, isn't that the expression?
I'm sure there is an expression, stink on ice. I do not. I'm not familiar with it.
Fair enough. We'll look it up after. But but Kris Paul was miraculous at the end of the game. What happens if he doesn't hit a couple circus shots?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a difference. I mean, of course, Randall hit that amazing 3 out of the corner, and that was a circus shot in its own right. But I mean, that's just, and I do want to say one thing in terms of Kris Paul. Obviously, if I knew the Knicks were going to be this good, I would have been more open to a Kris Paul trade. But the one thing that I'm taking away from this, there's a reason why I'm kind of glad Kris Paul isn't a Knick. And I would have taken him. But I think also your timeline's a bit more condensed. But more importantly, we have
breaking news. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Let's see.
Do you get Stein?
Yes, I do get Stein. All right.
Huge breaking.
It's Ignas Brazdeikis is signing a 10-day contract with the Magic. Huge breaking news.
Massive breaking news.
Yes. But the other thing is this, as well as anyone that when Kris Paul's on your team, he elevates the level of play of your teammates. And seeing Julius Randle rise to this level, I'd hate the idea that his talent was only because Chris Paul was added. Like there would be this conversation of, is Randle that good, or is Chris Paul just making him good? And now Randle's playing with not a great point guard, and he's able to make these strides. And we can say this is for real, at least we believe it to be. And now let's add great talent to elevate his game even more. So would have loved Chris Paul, of course, but he fits perfectly with that Phoenix team. They're a little bit more ahead of the curve than the Knicks are, so it all works out.
Well, and plus in terms of like credit, and don't mind my daughter is making her thoughts known on Chris Paul.
She really wanted the Knicks to trade for him.
Well, here's the thing about Chris Paul, though. If Chris Paul comes, and this is kind of what you just said, if Chris Paul comes to your team, it's Chris Paul's team. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing this with Devin Booker. Devin Booker is the second best player on the best team in a really brutal Western Conference right now. And there's no guarantee. He's probably not going to make an All-NBA team. Meanwhile, there's discussion that Julius Randle is going to be a first-team All-NBA player. So, okay, moving along. So let's get to the nonsense. Actually, this is a good transition to the nonsense, because if it's the one thing that we learned, I think, watching the Suns game, or if a reminder watching the Suns game, and I don't know if you caught any of Jason Tatum's 60-point explosion the other night. I watched most of the fourth quarter and overtime of that game. It's just a reminder that in the NBA, it's really, 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 really hard to win a basketball game if you don't have a perimeter player who has the capability of putting you on their back and like going off at some point. And we got some Dame Lillard rumors this week, and they came from Mark Berman, who said something. Well, do you actually have the exact? I should probably have the exact wording. What did exactly he say? That they're like going to look into it over the summer? I
think he said there'd be interest. There'd be interest. Teams match up perfectly in terms of a trade, and the Knicks would be willing to part with 3 to 4 first round picks. The specifics that he said in terms of like the deal that they'd like to hang on to RJ Barrett and Obi Toppin. RJ Barrett's not getting traded anywhere for as long as, unless he asks to leave, and hopefully he never will. That part of the story isn't interesting to me. The part of the story that's interesting to me is the Dame part of the story, because again, Andrew and I talked about Dame last week. I did not pull that out of nowhere. Spoiler alert again. That name has been floating around the Garden, I think, of late. And I don't know if it's coming from someplace and specifically emanating out of Portland, emanating out of Dame's representation. But I did think that it was very interesting that I had heard that before the Yahoo article from Chris Haynes, who, if anybody doesn't know, he wrote an article basically saying that, hey, the Blazers need to get their shit together and get Dame some help. He used to work the beat in Portland. It's not hard to read between the lines of where the sentiment is coming from. It was pointed out to me on Twitter that like that article speaks more to like, well, that was more like get Dame help, not get Dame out. To which my response is, well, then what happens if they can't get him the help he wants? What's the next step after that? Again, not hard to connect the dots here. And then the Berman article drops. So I'm going to turn it to you. What are your thoughts on the Dame article? I kind of hated the fact that it came out. And the reason I hated it was because it's the sort of thing where, yeah, maybe something works out, but there's so much good going on with the Knicks that turning this into like, oh, how are the Knicks going to get Damian Lillard? It feels like it's taking it a step too far. For what it's worth, I don't even see Dame asking out right now. I don't disagree. I think there's absolutely an avenue where he says, this is really not working for me. And when you look at the teams that are out there and the players that might be movable and the assets that the Blazers have, which isn't a ton, then basically seeing like, well, who would we get? It's trading CJ for, I don't know, what front court player is there really that is that attainable and makes sense?
Well, that's the thing is I don't think there is a player that is easily attainable for them that would put them into the stratosphere, that would make them the type of contender that I think Dame wants them to be.
Exactly. Right. And so then when you configure the Knicks, I mean, sure, it's a perfect fit there, but my concern and it's, Dame is going to be 31 next year. So yeah, I mean, you're getting older, but you still have time. It just changes your window a bit more, right? So to me, I think that trading for Dame, even in general, I wouldn't want it to happen this offseason anyway, unless you're figuring out some sort of crazy way. And I'm going to regret this probably, but there is a possible mathematical way of getting Kawhi on board and then trading for Dame. It's not going to happen. It's not even going to happen.
Couldn't even make it through a whole episode.
No, but I'm legitimately saying it will not happen. So
can I ask you though, why you think that would be the only way you'd want to bring Dame here this summer?
All right. So let me put it this way. When you look at next year's free agent class, you've got possibly Steph Curry, possibly Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine. Those are 4 all-star, ranging in talent, of course, and age too, and finances even as well. But you've got 4 fantastic backcourt options. And to me, it's kind of like, well, I don't see the Dame issue being resolved right now anyway. I think they'll probably fire Terry Stotts. They'll have a new head coach. They'll try something out.
Good head coach.
Allegedly. Sure, but
Allegedly.
But he seems to have lost the locker room. Based
it's
on
been a lot. It's been almost a decade of Stotts now in Portland.
It's time. And so I think that Dame, he's been this loyal before, so why not continue being loyal to see where it goes a little bit longer? And then if it reaches a breaking point, I could see the following year doing something else. But I will say to me, there's always there's good pressure and there's bad pressure in life. Good pressure.
Very wise.
Well, it's just the sort of thing, like good pressure to me is actually what LeBron does, where people think, oh, he's holding a front office hostage. Yeah, but he's also making sure that the front office does the right moves to create a legitimate contender, because it used to be, and it still has been, that having LeBron James in your lineup usually leads to at least a conference finals appearance.
Well, it leads to a finals appearance if you
that too
8 straight years.
Right. And so the ability to say, like, this is what we're going to do. Let's work together to make this happen. That to me is good pressure. Bad pressure is saying, I'm here, I'm loyal. And I respect the hell out of loyalty. Believe me, I really do. But there's a complacency. It's like, oh, we're going to take your loyalty for granted and we're going to build around you. But at the end of the day, you're still going to be here.
Yeah, but there's a one caveat, which is that, and I think specifically the Cleveland situation where they had the Nets pick and I think he was trying to get them to put that pick in a deal to make them better right now. And they didn't. And then he ended up leaving. With Dame, I would actually argue that I think Portland has gone how much, I just think they've been I shouldn't say poorly managed. They've made some nice transactions. They're not a bad team by any stretch of the imagination, but they also have made some missteps. And I'm just not, is there a situation where it's like, you could look at Portland and like, oh, they're not doing, or they've had opportunities to do better and knew it was the right move and said no? Or is it more just like, look, you guys have tried your best, it ain't working? I think it's more the latter. Whereas I think with whatever, we're getting off track, but
just in the sense of it never felt like Portland has really gone in on finding a third star, or second, depending on how you see CJ. I see him as a great player who just does not get all-star recognition, but he'll cap your ceiling a little bit too. He's
the second best player on their team, and he should be the third best player on a championship team. Yeah.
Right. So, but the fact is that Portland has also botched numerous summers, in my opinion.
Yes.
I mean, 2016, they had one of the worst. We talk about Joakim Noah and the hangover that we still feel from that.
Oh,
that
Crabbe
is nowhere
was just
in comparison.
As bad.
I mean, they had Alan Crabbe for that monster contract. They signed someone else to a huge deal. I'm blanking.
They didn't sign Turner. Did they sign the Turner
contract?
Evan Turner.
Yes,
they signed the Turner contract. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just they've. I mean, I'm not a Nurkic fan. I think that they've won all of their playoff series without Nurkic.
It's a good. I think it's a good contract. I'm not a huge fan of him either. The only other thing that I'll say, in terms of Portland, the thing that stands out to me is the pick. Oh my God, the guy who hasn't been on the court, Zach Collins.
Zach Collins.
When they had an opportunity to get, if they wanted a center, there was a pretty good one who's down in Miami now. Could you imagine if Bam Adebayo was on that team? It's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, and they had pick 15 and 20 in that draft, and they traded up for Zach Collins.
Yeah.
So it's kind of rough for them. But with all this being said, I mean, it'd be curious to see if their general manager is still there. but who knows? So yes, when you consider all of these things, and you can understand why it would make sense to acquire Dame, and I'm not so much against it. I don't think that he'll reach his breaking point right now. I think he's been this loyal. He'll be willing to give it at least another year and go from there. But Can I
ask you one question?
Sure.
If he asks out, do you think that they will push back and they will basically not let him out? Because I think he's earned the currency with that organization, and quite frankly, in the league at large, that if he goes to them and he says, I want you to trade me, I think they're going to trade him.
It's not just that they would trade him. I think he would provide a list of teams and they would honor that list.
For sure.
Yes. He's one of maybe 5 players or so who could do that, I think.
And we're not talking about anything as contract. We're talking about just currency with the organization, a respect factor, which is but to me, that's where the interesting thing is, because I almost wonder at this point is like, talk about craziness. Is there going to be some talk around the league? Like, I want to be the one to get to New York and be the guy to pair with Julius Randle and help take the Knicks to the next step. Like, here's the thing. It's not insane for me to think Dame's going to want out. It's not insane for me to think Dame's going to look around the league and think the Knicks are the best option for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. Perhaps the most prominent of which is there would be none of the, he's joining a super team. No. This is not Kevin Durant joining the Warriors. This is the possibility of an MVP candidate going to a team that's a nice spunky story and elevating them to contender status. And I think there's a real possibility that they would be able to put a package together that would make Portland say, yeah, okay, we'll do it. I just don't know what, like, that's kind of where I don't think it's insane, and I don't think it's the wrong move either for the Knicks.
Yeah, no, I think there's an absolute possible chance, especially when you look at the layout of what the NBA is right now. The teams that, yes, you could always see a team make an upgrade, kind of put some huge offer in. But I think that based on where teams are kind of situated and maybe what Dame would like and where he'd want to be, where he could see a clear-cut option to win, and still, if you go to New York, you're going to have millions of fans behind you. You can't say that if you go to, say, like a small market team of sorts. He's found loyalty within that small market, but I don't think anyone would blame Dame for leaving the situation. No one
would blame him.
Right.
Not a person in the world. It would be, I actually think league-wide, I think it would be celebrated. Yeah, by the average NBA fan.
And if you're Portland, then you probably turn around and you trade CJ as well. You're not going to be a good team. So between the picks you got from and talent you got from both of those players, and the ability to then essentially tank, you're in a really great spot. That's another reason why I don't think they'll trade Dame too, is because they're going to want to try to re-sign Norman Powell, and then if they keep him, they can also flip him the year after to get someone. And the big conversation is this, those players I named, those all-stars, all-NBA caliber players, would you rather try to take a shot at signing one of them for free, or would you rather try to trade a lot of your assets for Dame? Because here's my big thing. My big thing is this. If you're the Knicks, I really want the Knicks to sign someone. And then a year or two.
We all do.
Right, of course. But a year or two down the line, you can try to create more salary, and then you use your picks and that salary to match for another star, whoever that might be around that time, like 2023. That's when you can then have this bigger team and be deeper, and you've got all these assets that you can then parlay.
You hear what she's doing?
She's agreeing with me.
No, she's not agreeing with you.
Agreeing with me, John.
No, and because the reality that you're talking about, I think to a certain extent, doesn't exist in the NBA anymore. I do not. I think.
But why can't it?
Because with who? Who is it going to exist with?
What is the rush? The Knicks have this offseason and next offseason to make a move. If Dame's not calling to be moved right now anyway, it's all moot, right? So then if we're waiting another offseason, you see what unfolds. And if you're able to sign someone and not give up a haul for Dame, great. That's awesome, especially if they're younger, or in the case of someone like Steph Curry, where at age 34, I'm absolutely committing a max contract to him.
Yeah, but
all these conversations, Dame doesn't have to be your plan A. He can be part of all of your plans without having to just be the guy.
So this is my issue, is because I I don't think we live in the world anymore where it's just like, no. We're not going to give up all the stuff to get the top 7 or 8 player now. We're going to wait at the chance that a top 7 or 8 player is going to grace us with his presence in free agency. And I don't see who that guy is, because unless you like, do you think Steph Curry's leaving Golden State? She doesn't think so. Do you think Joel Embiid is not going to sign the Supermax?
No, I think Joel will be insane. My point is this. If you're Steph, right, and you're looking at the situation around you, and last time I checked, the Warriors had, I think, the 23rd or so best offense. This was maybe a week ago. So it's certainly, changed a little bit, but not to such a staggering degree. And you're basically saying, okay, well, I'm coming back when, he could resign for his age 34 to 38 seasons.
Yeah.
And say, I could stay with Klay Thompson on the wrong side of 30 off of torn ACL and torn Achilles.
So this is a Curry thing.
I could stay with Draymond. What?
So you're punting on the. So basically,
but it's not punting, because I don't see Dame being available this offseason anyway.
I guess that's where we disagree. I don't think it's insane.
It's not so much insanity. It's more, I think that, yes, I could see him saying, like, we're all in a different direction.
Let me rephrase that. I don't think it's far-fetched.
It's not so much far-fetched. I just don't think that he's, and I could be completely wrong here, don't get me wrong. I just don't think that he is at the point where he's broken out and says, I want to go right now.
Okay.
I want to be gone.
Can we agree on this? If he says, I want to go and I want to go to the Knicks are not in a position to turn down a trade in which they would give up, let's just call it the Harden package. Okay. I don't think the Knicks are in a position to say no to giving up the Harden package for Dame at the prospect of, because here's the reality. You're saying no to that for one of two reasons. You're saying no to that either because you are so confident someone's just going to walk through your door in free agency that is going to make as big of a difference in championship equity, not conference finals equity, in championship equity as Damian Lillard, or you think that there is going to be another superstar that is going to demand a trade for you that you could get for a similar package. And looking around the league right now, I just don't see where even the remotely likely free agent is that is going to walk through your door, because I don't see Curry leaving. Embiid and Jokic aren't going anywhere. So then it's like, okay, do you wait for Donovan Mitchell or Devin Booker to request a trade from their situations on the hope that one of those things happen? By the way, they're the top 2 teams in the league right now.
I agree with you. I do.
If the situation presents itself, I think you have to jump on it.
Yes. If he wants out, then it changes the dynamics of all of this. Because then you're looking at a situation where, okay, well, he's gone. We can do something about this. Then you can use, yes, you've got all this.
So we agree then. If he asks out, they should put together the package. You just don't think he's going to ask out. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
That's where I'm at.
That's fair.
Because if he asks out, just for what it's worth, you can take on a lot of his salary, but you can also send back what? Kevin Knox? Then I'd have to dig a little deeper into the math. It shouldn't take me long, but the idea is you'd have enough money left over, because Dame really got screwed over by the whole salary cap issue, because
he's at 38, I think.
It's around 39.3 or something.
He's at 38. They're going to have 50. It's Knox. I mean,
well, this will probably segue us into the next conversation in terms of Obi, but yeah, there's a way where you can create more money and then sign a 4th starter, if you will. You could still even keep Mitch. It probably means you lose quickly. If we're being honest, I don't see why they wouldn't want him.
I think you're looking at 2 of quickly Obi and Mitch, and so that's actually interesting from a roster building standpoint. If you have Dame and you have RJ,
you'd probably resend Bullock in some manner.
Yeah, I mean, you would feel more comfortable with a whether it's Bullock or somebody else, might as well be Bullock, with a wing who all he does is kind of play the Joe Harris role. You don't need the creation from the shooting guard spot because you have Dame and you have RJ and you have Julius. Right. So I wonder if it would make quickly more expendable. I think it's probably a moot point because, as you intimated, I don't think they're making this trade without quickly in it. Portland. So is it quickly in Obi? Is it quickly in Mitch? And then it's the picks, But
I think one reason why the Knicks would maybe not be interested in trading Mitch in this scenario is because if they make him a restricted free agent, they create more salary that way. And then that's tradable salary. If they wanted to, they could keep Mitch too, because he would certainly address a problem that they would have. in that being a starting caliber center who could then help actually, be part of a defensive caliber team that is that consistent and is a legitimate contender. But, that sort of thinking as well of how do you create salary? And, we've got Luca Vildoza coming over as well. So does that...
The immortal Luca Vildoza.
Right,
he's the answer. He's the skeleton key that unlocks all this.
Yeah, Derrick Rose has certainly made quite a lot of money in his career. So
can I push back on the Mitch thing? I actually think it would make it more likely that they would want to keep Mitch because of it's 1.8 next year, as opposed maybe that makes a little bit of a difference. They keep him on his final year and then just we'll figure out the
right. I'm not saying trade him right away. I'm just saying collecting as much salary as you can so that way you keep, and then maybe you're over the cap and then you use the mid-level exception.
There's a ton of options.
Right. You can go down a rabbit hole but it's the question of, will the Knicks even have to do that? What is Dame's limit? We don't know. We don't know what Dame's breaking point is.
I just, if they finish, and we should say in the West right now, things are really jumbled from it's really 5 to 7. Someone's going to end up in that 7th spot with the play-in. It's probably going to be Portland. If it is Portland, and I don't know, it's not guaranteed they beat whether it's Memphis or San Antonio or who's the other team in that Golden State. It's not a guarantee they win that game. And if they do win that game, what are they doing against the Suns? What are they doing against the Jazz? What are they doing against the Clippers? What are they doing against the Nuggets? All those teams, I think, possibility of whitewashing the Blazers. I don't know. It bears watching. Can we agree to that?
Sure. And you want to hear a fun caveat that comes with the Blazers don't make the playoffs?
I love it.
The Blazers don't make the playoffs. They can't trade any of their future first round picks
because of their Covington deal.
It's protected. Their first round pick's lottery protected, which is so if they don't make the playoffs, then they have to either go back to Detroit and say, what can we do? Or I guess it's Houston in this case, because the pick was moved to Houston say, what can we add to unprotect our picks so we can trade to add someone around?
But they already owe a future pick.
They owe a first round pick, but all of their picks would be locked in because it's lottery protected through 2027. And then the 2028 pick comes aboard, but they can't trade that because then it's a Stepien issue. So they'd have to go back to Houston and say, what can we do to unfreeze our picks? And it's just,
no, it's messy.
It's gross.
It's gross if you're Portland and you want to fix this. Okay, let's move on. I think we did the Dame conversation justice. Okay. You are more interested in this than me, so I'm going to let you vamp for however long you want. There was a snippet in a Yahoo article that I want to be clear. I did not read that as a report. I read that as some author. I'm not going to pretend to know who it is. I don't care. Saying that Knicks need to trade Obi Toppin this summer because he plays the same position as Julius Randle, I guess, and therefore you must trade him for 58 cents on the dollar. I don't know. This got under your skin a bit, I believe.
Well, it was more this, and then the idea of the Knicks then would not trade Obi for Damian Lillard. This idea that it's like, if push comes to shove, it's like, we want Obi. No, okay, the deal's dead. Just all this conversation with Obi, and it just ties back to the fact of I don't see him really going anywhere, but that doesn't mean he wouldn't be moved.
I don't think
and this conversation about, okay, well, Randall is playing at an all NBA level. You can still have Obi getting better behind him. Maybe he sees more minutes at the 5 next year. Especially if the Knicks don't retain Nerlens Noel. Do you play him 10 minutes a game at the 5 and do some sort of small ball lineup?
It's a possibility.
Right. So it didn't so much get under my skin. It was just like, why are we having so many outrageous takes about Obi Toppin?
Just because people let the right shit.
Of course. But, just let him do his thing and then we can evaluate later on. You don't have to make it done right now. He's clearly beloved.
Yeah. Fits in well with the culture. I think he's shown growth. There's zero reason to trade this guy right now unless someone wants to pay you 100 cents on the dollar, which I don't even know what that would be, but whatever. We don't need to talk about it right now. I hear you. The more interesting thing for me is the, as you called it, the Perry article, even though I said I think of it as the RJ article. That's fine. Whatever. Reasonable minds can differ. Yeah. So this one, I should know who wrote this. This was Berman also?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wrote about how Scott Perry had an opportunity to trade the 3rd pick to Atlanta for the 8th pick and the 10th pick in the 2019 draft. Those picks ended up being Jackson Hayes, who now plays for the Pelicans, and Cam Reddish, who has been out for a month, 2 months now in Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's persona non grata. I don't know if he even gets in that rotation if he comes back healthy with the way how many guys they have, but neither here nor there. There were other guys on the board. I don't think anybody jumps out. The point is, Scott Perry apparently was a big reason why they did not make that trade. Look. Do you want to give fine? You want to give Scott Perry credit for not doing a thing that would have been, I think, looked at as a little silly. To me, the move that would have been interesting and I love RJ, but like if you were telling me that you could get what did Cleveland take Garland at 5, I think, or was he the 4th pick?
He was 5th.
Who's 4th? Why am I blanking? Huh?
DeAndre Hunter.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Hunter was 4. Okay. If you could have gotten like Garland and like a future Cavs first that could have been unprotected at some point in the future, like that's a more interesting conversation. I think 3 for 8 and 10 wouldn't have been a good deal. And I don't know that anybody would have looked at it at the time and said like that's a worthy deal. And they certainly wouldn't look at it now and say it was a worthy deal. But you want to give Scott Perry credit for this? Fine. Do you want to give Scott Perry credit for this?
I think you have to in some manner. I mean, listen, I understand that a lot of Knicks fans don't like Scott Perry, and I often fall on the side of where like a lot of his moves have not looked great. We know there's some connections with players that also would be better off if those connections didn't transpire in New York, specifically, for example, with Peyton, but other moves as well. And I go back to this mindset of we've seen him do one deal on his own. And that was the Marcus Morris trade. And that was a good deal. Other than that,
yes.
It's very much, okay, is he a Steve Mills product? Is he a Leon Rose product? That's kind of how it feels to me. And it's hard for us to pinpoint maybe what he has done and what he hasn't done. And I think that a lot of times people would say like, well, picking RJ was the no-brainer move. And I agree. I absolutely agree. I think RJ was the guy at 3, and it was pretty obvious, but clearly there were dissenters. There were people who just didn't believe that was the case. And I think it's nice to at least acknowledge that someone preferred quality over quantity, because even if he didn't take Jackson Hayes or Cam Reddish, although I would imagine he would have taken Cam Reddish. I mean, you could have had Hachimura in there. There's other talent that was certainly
for what it's worth.
It wasn't a great draft after that.
No, but for what it's worth, I think there are certainly people in the NBA who, if you ask them, would you rather have RJ Barrett or Hachimura and Tyler Herro? I have to think that there are people in the NBA who would take the package of Hachimura and Herro.
They'd be idiots, but sure, they would exist.
I would not.
Hachimura is a good player, and
Hachimura is a good player.
My thing with
Herro's, despite having a down year, I think is still a good player. I would rather have.
He's fine, but again, this goes to the point of: do you want quality or quantity? And
do you want 2 quarters, or do you want the fit? Well, actually, no, that's not. What is it? It would be like, I guess 2 quarters or $1. I don't know if I'm 4 quarters or $1.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, no, but that's. Yeah, I guess that whatever. We would both rather have RJ Barrett. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yes.
The Frank thing, we should touch on that. It's the last bit before we get to the playoff picture and the week ahead. And progress report. We have to do a quick progress report. So apparently the Knicks could have moved, according to Ian Begley of SNY, could have moved Frank around the deadline. And there are at least some people in the organization that still believe in him, which is interesting because I think a lot of people were under the impression that Steve Mills was his saving grace for a period of time, and that Scott Perry is the one that wanted him out of there. Steve Mills is no longer making basketball decisions. So I think it begs the question, like, who still believes in him? Who wants him there? Maybe it's Tibbs. How crazy would that be? Is that insane? I don't think that's insane at all. I actually think Tibbs really does like Frank and just feels like he's just not a part of his best 10-man healthy unit right now.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I wanted to believe as a Frank fan that Frank staying was a sign that he'll be here long term, but there are plenty of other players that the Knicks could have traded at the deadline, and they chose not to because they liked what the team was doing, and the chemistry that was working for them, and clearly things are paying off. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to dollars and cents. I don't know what role Frank will have moving forward, especially when you look at what the Knicks are doing. I'd love to see him back. It's just, what is the deal? Are the Knicks really going to tap into future cap space if they don't get a player like Dame Lillard this summer? And then they go into the 2022 offseason. Are they going to spend valuable cap space on Frank? I don't necessarily see it.
Do you think that there's any chance they give him the qualifying offer, which is it? I could be way off.
Like
is it $8
million.
I was about to say it's 8. Okay. I don't think there's a chance in hell they give him the qualifying offer.
I don't think they would either, just based on the fact that, like if Frank wanted to be moved, because he would technically get a no trade clause, then they could do that. But I think they would much rather say like, well, you are replaceable in some ways, at least on the court. We just know that based on the fact that Tibbs doesn't really run him out there that much. So
yeah.
I'd love to see him prosper in New York. I just don't know what avenue that is, but that's why I don't want to give myself hope by the fact that he is here past the deadline. That means he's staying.
I'm blaming you if my daughter wakes up, because it's look, we all like to have hope with Frank. I still have hope. You still have hope. All of the Hive has hope. I just, if you're Frank, are you going to accept the money that is being offered to you from the Knicks this summer when there is another team out there in the league that is going to be like, look, we can't pay a ton, but you'll play here, or you'll have the opportunity to win a real spot? That's the thing I keep coming back to. And maybe there's no team out there of 29 other teams who looks at him and is like, we're going to give you a chance to compete for a spot, like a real chance. I think there will be at least one such team.
I agree, especially given that he's not going to cost a whole lot. I mean, you could give him the room exception or part of it. That's, at most almost $5 million. And I know that people might be thinking, well, he's not worth anywhere near that. But I mean, Chris Dunn just got the room exception, and he hasn't played a single minute this entire season. How
about Oklahoma City and Toronto are the two obvious teams to me. If you're Oklahoma City and you have all the cap space in the world and you have no intention of spending it on any long-term money other than maybe taking on bad salary this summer, like, why wouldn't you offer Frank 2 years, whatever, $10 million or something?
Right.
Like, I don't think that's crazy at all. Okay. I don't think we need to really do a long progress report right now. We mentioned, we talked about Obi. Mentioned Quickly was the most important player other than Julius Randle, who's the most important player in every game he plays. I think Quickly was arguably the most important player in the Bulls game. Were there players that had better games? Absolutely. But I think him coming in and really shooting the lights out of the ball for about 4.5 minutes was big, because it was a reminder to me that if the Knicks are going to pull an upset in the playoffs, and we've touched on this concept before, I think Quickly is going to be the reason. I think he's the wild card. I think he's the guy that can single-handedly, because at this point, I feel so confident in knowing, for the most part, what we're going to get from Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Nerlens Noel, Derek, like, go down the line, Reggie Bullock. Quickly, it's not that I'm worried about what he's going to bring to the table. It's more just like, what's the way to put it? Not that he runs hot and cold. Because he's not, if you look at the numbers, he's not consistent. He'll have, 3 games or 3 points or 6 points in one game, and then he'll go off for 20 or 25. But I don't know. I hate to put this on Tibbs, and it's not on Tibbs, but like, it feels like whenever he gets a real opportunity, he comes through, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
that's how it seems. But yeah, I think the benches the rotation is going to shorten a little bit. We could see 10-man rotations, but I feel like it's more likely we see really heavy 8-9 guys playing. Maybe Alfred just sets the table like he's kind of been doing, starting the first, starting the third, and then checking out for the majority of the game, if not the whole game after that. So, and then you're wondering about who fits that spot. Well, how is Alec Burks? Is he going to be healthy? Are you going to bring him back into the fold? Because, I mean, you just named 4 or 5 players. I mean, let's just say the four starting guys, Elf for a little bit of time. You're probably going to have Taj in there. Maybe you see Alec Burks, Derrick Rose, and even just Quickly. That would be 9 right there. So, I'd be curious to see if he does get a lot of that time. But again, we've talked about how the Knicks don't really have a ton of players who have had playoff experience. I mean, they have some, but it's maybe about 3, 4.
It's significant playoff experience. It's Rose and Taj, and then Burks has some.
And Noel has a little bit last year. Noel.
Yes, you're right. I'm going to put you on the spot, and I'm going to jam you up big time. This is going to be a lot of fun for me. We should say the Knicks are 4 games back of the Bucks right now. Bucks actually have 2 straight against the Nets. And so the race isn't quite over, but boy, would the Bucks need to fall on their face. We're more looking at the Hawks, the Celtics, and the Heat as we sit and record this right now. And again, this is going to change by the time you listen to this. The Knicks are a game and a half up on the Hawks and Celtics, and 2 games up on the Heat. Let's assume they get in, and they're in the play-in. We should say that. We talk about burying the lead. They're in the play-in. They're going to be in the play-in. That is now a certainty.
At the worst.
Taj Gibson, one of those players that has playoff experience. We know Tibbs trusts him. What do you think is more likely, that Tibbs pulls Payton, a healthy Payton, from the rotation entirely? We don't have to talk about who replaces him. It's a longer conversation, but pulls him from the rotation entirely, puts in quickly Rose, Burks into the starting lineup, or that a healthy Mitchell Robinson goes into the rotation?
I have to go with the first option.
So you think it's more likely that Payton is pulled out of the rotation altogether than Mitch going into the rotation?
Well, the Knicks, I don't believe, have acknowledged that Mitch is out for the year because
they haven't.
They want to rule him out. But I will say that this injury that Mitch has, there is a history of it reoccurring. Mm-hmm. And I think usually it takes closer to 40 to 50 games that a player would have to miss in terms of coming back.
Yep.
Mitch will have missed about 30.
Yep.
So you're close, but I mean, let's say it's on the more cautious side. We're now jumping the gun by 20 games. Yep. What is the risk that you're running for his long-term health? What does that mean for his salary for next year? I mean, if we want to be honest, if Mitch had to be hurt during a season, if you're the Knicks and you're anticipating a potential contract, then you're at least looking at a silver lining here. You wanted him to be healthy, of course.
That's cynical. But that's cynical. That's cynical for you.
It's not that cynical.
It's cynical.
It really isn't, though.
I think you could listen. You could argue your case. I think it's cynical, though, because you're basically saying that they would keep a healthy Mitchell Robinson out.
I'm saying he based on what we've seen, every case is different. Obviously, we don't know what his condition is. If he's on the healthy side,
getting all soft voiced all of a sudden to try to lessen the blow of your cynicism.
But it's not just cynicism. He's hurt. He's clearly hurt. He just had surgery.
And you're saying that the contract would factor into them keeping or not keeping him healthy.
No, I don't think that one postseason series is going to change the dynamic. I think the time for him this season was there. One playoff series isn't going to dictate what his payday is. I'm saying all of it combined.
Yeah, no. Listen, I'm not arguing about the fortuitousness from the Knicks' point of view that he got hurt this year. I'm not arguing with that. I'm just arguing I thought you were saying that they would hold him out if he was healthy.
No.
Purely for the contract.
I just don't see him as being healthy based on the fact that he was hurt at a time where, again, like you've got that 40, 50 game span. Yeah. He's not close to that. Yeah. So I don't want to see him get hurt again. Like, the contract thing, he had his chance to prove why he should be paid a big salary. And we can't make up for that lost time. A playoff series isn't going to do that.
No, I 100%. I'm not disagreeing with the words you're saying. And I agree with you wholeheartedly also that I think there is a much higher chance that Elfrid Payton gets pulled from the rotation than we ever see Mitchell Robinson again this season. I don't think there's a prayer that we're seeing Mitch again this season. I think me and you were on the same page about that. Okay. Predictions? Are we there?
I think we're there.
Okay. So let me go ahead and pull up the old big board here. So we always do this, and we don't have Andrew as a tiebreaker either. Are we predicting the Rockets game that will have been played by the time folks are listening to this?
Let's do it.
Okay, sure.
Because we're doing the whole week, so let's do that.
We're doing the whole week. Okay. So on the docket, wow, we have 5 games we're predicting because we're going to record, I think. Oh wait, no, we're not.
No,
No, we have 4. Okay, because of Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, moms that we did not forget about at all, unlike other people who may be involved with this podcast.
Not me, but yes.
Not me either. I don't know who it could be. No, Andrew, we won't get into it, but Andrew was an amazing son. We'll just leave it at that. Okay. At Houston, at Memphis, at Denver, at Phoenix. You're always the one who remembers. How did we do last week? I said 1-1.
We went 1-1. And I said
okay, great. So this is tough. This is tough because this is tough. Actually, well, no, it's not tough. I feel really good about this. I'm gonna go 2-2. All
right, I'll go 1-3.
Really?
Well, I mean, listen, the Knicks haven't won in Denver, I think, since the Bush administration. So
which one?
Oh yeah. HW. So it's been about 30 years. I think they can hang tough with Phoenix, and I think they could potentially win that Grizzlies game. But that's tough. I'd love to see. I want to be wrong. I want to see. I think a 2-4 West Coast trip would be a success.
I've said that on record, and I'm not going to change now.
But for this one, I'm going to have to go 1-3 since you took 2-2.
Would you have taken 2-2?
Yeah, I might have considered it. Having Memphis in there. I think the Phoenix game that might have been a stretch, but hung close.
I might have considered it. Speaking of politics, you're quite the politician over here. Yeah. Okay, we made it through a show without Andrew in one piece. I hope we're both wrong, and I hope I go 3-1. Let me ask you this: What would 4-2 shock you on this trip?
Probably. I think what would surprise me the most is if any of those wins came in Denver. That would be the bigger thing.
For anybody who doesn't know, Denver, since Murray has gone down, and I don't know if they play tonight. I should know that, but I don't. I think they're 8-1 without Murray. They've been awesome. I'm looking at the other teams. I agree with you. I don't think they're going to win in Denver, but I think, what is that? Oh, I have a post-practice press conference right now. I think they could win, I think they could steal one of the LA games because LeBron is still feels like working his way back. We'll see. Clippers haven't been exactly lighting it up. So I don't know. We'll see. 4-2 would surprise me a great deal. Would it shock me? Shock is such a strong word. Okay. I'm gonna dwell on that. Jeremy, anything from you before we get out of here?
We've got one thing from a producer corner. Since Andrew's not here, we'll pick up the slack. Happy birthday, Kris. Kris Pursiainen. The birthday boy is now a birthday man, although he's technically of legal age.
He's still a teenager. You're not a man if you're a teenager.
That's true.
Yeah.
Apparently, we are ranking the following celebrities that share a birthday with Kris. So, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, David Beckham, Paul George, Ellie Kemper from The Office, Bridesmaids, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Pat McAfee, and DC Young Fly, who Andrew has written as, in parentheses, a rapper apparently.
I mean, it's my own personal ranking.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know who DC Young Fly or Pat McAfee are.
Pat McAfee was a kicker. He's a punter for the Colts.
I don't care. I'll put Ellie Kemper at the top. And I actually didn't even make it through season 1 of Kimmy Schmidt, but I really do enjoy her in The Office. And Bridesmaids, I think, has an argument for the best comedy of the last 10, 12 years. So I'll put Ellie Kemper, and then I don't really care about any of these other people. What about your list?
Yeah, I guess. I think Ellie Kemper makes me laugh quite a bit. So I'll put her number 1. The Rock might go second.
Actually, you know what? I'll put David Beckham second because I've always been a big Posh Spice fan. So, but by association, I'll put David Beckham second.
All right, and I'll exclude Pat McAfee and DC Young Fly. Well, at least I'll exclude DC Young Fly because I honestly didn't know him before seeing this. And I'll put Paul George 4th. to continue the apparent slander that I keep giving him.
I'll put Paul George last. I think that's what I'm going to do.
That's fair. I'd put him behind DC Youngfly.
Put him behind DC. I feel bad for DC Youngfly. I'm sure
he's like, I can't hate on DC Youngfly because I don't know him.
So. Oh, sorry. Emmanuel Quickly's talking.
All right.
I'm going to go listen to what he has to say. And everybody out there, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We will be back with you another episode before you know it. Take care.